First thing I'd like to do is welcome Coco as our new clerk of the planning board. And Coco has worked in the past subbing for when Christina was out on leave. So she's familiar with how we do things. But the formal part of it is the organizational statement, which I don't have here either. I thought I had it. Well, anyway, basically it is, I'm going to make a motion to nominate Coco Thurman as our planning board clerk for the 2002 year. And I think the statement goes along at the rates proposed or permitted by the town board. So I make a motion to accept her position. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. That was the formal part of it that we had. So minutes from last month are fairly straightforward. We paid a bill. We discussed 4 wetlands applications, and that was it for the greater part. We've all looked at these. I make a motion to accept the meeting minutes of February 8th, 2022.
I'll second that.
Any comments before we finalize it?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. We have one invoice for EHA for professional services in January. And it was mostly for work on the fine art docs to review the final resolution, to draft the final resolution, and to review the documents that are needed. She spent a little over 4 hours. Time well worth it. Total charge is $1,223.44. I make a motion to accept the EHA invoice in January for $1,223.44. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. So we can just review. We have some correspondence. It's again very light. It was a light month. Something regarding the Goodson's attorney regarding their mapping. Was reached out by a appraiser for Sylvester Manor property. You guys saw the correspondence there. Carla Frey Vogel had reached out to us regarding the White subdivision, mentioning that the George White party is backing out. We can talk regarding that follow-up. I did speak to Beth Baldwin. She reached out to the other attorneys and came back after having spoken to Gail Wickham, I believe is her name, that we should really hold on doing anything with lots 8 and 9 until the county has revisited the town and county, because as far as I understand, the expiration, the contracts they had have expired. We always assumed that they would be extended, but we were advised just to wait until the county and town take a more formal position. I see Carla White is with us. I did reach out to her and mention that we're not going to be discussing it. Les, Carla, while you're on, is there anything you want to say additionally?
No, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. No, I just want to say that I'm here to answer any questions, any concerns you might have. I'd like to move this process along. So if there's any questions anybody has for me, please send them my way. I'm here to answer them.
We most certainly will, and I appreciate your willingness to retrieve them. We've just been told, advised that, wait until we get some more feedback, because this caught us by surprise that a party was backing out. So we've been advised by our attorney to put it off, and hopefully we'll have some answers next month.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Received from Matt Sherman and Mary Faith Westfeld, discussion about the Fine Art minor subdivision progress where they were. So that was the end of correspondence. So I think with Fine Art, the latest update is that the deeds have been recorded. We're waiting for proof of recording, then the maps will come in and I can sign it, and that process will be done. Bloom minor subdivision, we're just waiting for the final application, and they have right now until July. Cassock Manor subdivision, they have until April. But I received an email today. They were asking to verify the fees, and I think they're all good and ready to file. Base C lot line adjustment, just waiting for the proof of map filing. We just talked about White. And the Robera subdivision, as I mentioned before, Matt is sitting on that. We asked for proof of the right-of-way accesses. There's 2 accesses to the property. And we asked for proof of them, that they have the rights to go over them. He seems to believe he has it, and he was just he's stalling with us to further the subdivision application at the health department, so he doesn't have to constantly ask for extensions here, which makes sense. So, so that's the end of the work session, or at least that part of it. Applications, other business. This language that I sent around to you, Town Board Wetlands and Special Permit Amendments draft, is going to have a public hearing on Friday, and what I understand most likely accepted Friday. Town boards already discussed this a few times. Part of this was brought to their attention by the building department. So I'm actually going to let Reed present, because I know they want you to present on Friday.
Right.
So have a warm up.
Well, I mean, basically, a lot of these things are, we've had a lot of problems with being able to cite things that are actually enforceable. There's previously, back in the good old days, you could sort of say, Billy used to use the because I said so line of reasoning.
Oh, you got that from his sister.
Yeah. And so, especially as things are getting more fraught and more litigious, we really need to be able to cite a law or a regulation if we're going to enforce it. And we were asking for things where the language was tidied up, and so that we had something that was viable. And that's kind of what generated all this. And one of the things that I specifically what's going on with some of the stuff here is that often there are vagaries in a permit, in a wetlands permit, or in a ZBA variance or special permit, where, for example, like with a lot, especially the wetlands, they would request plantings that we're really not able to quantify, or we don't have the knowledge. We don't have the horticultural knowledge.
You don't know what a Rosa rugosa is.
Right.
If they said 10 of them, you would go, okay, there's some
Right.
plantings there, but I don't know if that's a Rosa rugosa.
Yes, exactly. I learned my school job when I was in 8th grade at Rudolph Steiner School was to water the plants. And I discovered that if I killed them, I didn't have to water them. And so I am particularly ill-suited to oversee any horticultural decision-making. But anyway, so we had all these things where we would have these vagaries, because it's hard enough to quantify building code but to quantify a planting, a vegetative buffer or something. So a lot of times we would have to ask for clarification. And a lot of what this is about is saving the town board and saving the ZBA, having to go back and ask for a judgment on something or ask for a revision or an amendment. The idea is that we would have these de minimis, these abilities to make de minimis decisions.
You caught on to that word pretty quickly.
Yeah.
It's a good word.
It's a good word.
Stephen really thought it was a good word and he was bragging about it.
Yeah, I've been practicing in front of the mirror. But basically, the idea is that, we can say, okay, this is really not a very important qualification. You're good to go, or you're not good to go.
It's not like they're gonna have to go back and do the whole process.
Right. I'm actually,
The landscaping plan came up from Roush, where Roush on the end of Little Ram had a planting arrangement. Then he came back with another one and it was changed for whatever reason. And the argument was, well, do I have to go back for the town board to review it again? It's just a different plan, but I'm still providing, plantings. And so is that considered de minimis? Is that a minimal amount of change, or can that be done administratively by the building department, or does it really have to come back here? And that's the clarification on
it's
that.
funny, that was the trigger, although realistically that one, because of the way it was written, we would still have to go back because it probably wouldn't be de minimis because it's specific, because it changed fundamentally. But it also, that particular one, it referenced a specific site plan, landscaping plan by Ed Hollander that was very specific, and there was no relation. But it was interesting because that basically triggered the conversation where we're like, yeah, well, we actually have all these ones where it's, because they would specify they want 47 new plantings in one area. And it can be hard to, it
Count
sounds
plants.
doable, but in the reality, it's not. It's not.
And I guess in my experience with this too, is as an architect, my clients, we put together a very quick set of plans to get through the ZBA, because we're not going to spend a lot of time developing the plans to the fullest if we know the ZBA is, if we find the ZBA is not going to permit it. Why spend all the client's money and my time? And so when we start developing the plan, it might change a little bit. And so sometimes the changes will affect the ZBA or a minor change. Rarely, usually I try to fixate that, but I guess I'm not as, not everyone is as structured as I am. And so that's what these come up with. And it gives the town some ability, I think, to address this on an administrative level instead of a.
Yeah. I mean, we actually have one right now that we're dealing with where a church, where specifically we said any change, Stan Church, any change requires going back and getting an amendment. And they made a change that was really just almost cosmetic to create sort of a relationship between architectural characteristics. And they basically just bumped something out about 6 inches further into the wetlands, into the, well, actually into both the wetlands and the front yard setback. And in reality, it's nothing. But because of the way these things are worded and partially because of the contentiousness out there at the moment, if we make a decision that's, oh, that doesn't matter, somebody's going to squawk about it. And this at least gives us some plausible deniability that,
So in that-
Gives you a buffer.
yeah, it gives us a little bit of latitude.
So in that church case, of these 7, I wonder which one that would be. Because of the 7 that they use there to, that would qualify as de minimis. Would not qualify, so I'm wondering the 6 inches that they put the new change in.
Well, it's really then up to the. building
Yeah, I mean, I
department to
think
make that decision.
And I asked for a somewhat broad ability to say, you know what, this is really incidental. Because in reality, something like that, where there's a 6-inch change, if you were going to argue in public that it was significant, it would look silly.
Stephen Kiley threw out a case where he was wanted, where the house was 9 inches too wide, or was going 9 inches further into the side yard setback. And it took his client 7 months to get them to review this 9-inch change. And so, and it's the same thing with the wetlands, that's minimum 3 or 4 months and the ZBA. So allowing the building department to use common sense is.
Well, and we were told specifically by Doug Matz at the ZBA, if it's a foot into a setback, we don't want to hear about it. But it's one thing to say that in a phone call, and it's another thing
Put it in writing.
to put it in writing. And one of the issues, I mean, you've seen, we just had this whole thing with we have 4 different surveys that say very different things. And somebody can go out and survey something and they can stake it. Like, very often, if something is very close to a setback, we make them stake it. If it's actually, the process is, if it's within 3 feet of a setback, we can't really extrapolate where that is necessarily. So we want it staked. But a lot of times now people are pushing to 3 inch, we got things where they put a foundation 3 inches from the setback. Well, I don't think that's within the, I think that surveys are not that accurate. They're not. So
Well, that's
we
why
could
you
end
guys
up
get a
getting a survey
surveyor
at the
stake.
end that said it was.
The surveyor is supposed to go out and stake the house. If you're that close, you stake the house.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that the foundation installer, especially the local one, put it in the right place. So.
Yeah, these are not.
I
lines.
did an addition once and I had it staked, everything like that. 15 years later, the next door neighbor had a new survey done and my addition was 6 inches into the setback.
Mhm.
And that caused me so much stress, like 15 years after I did the job, the owner called me and lawyers and all this stuff. And, I said, and I called Chris, he goes, you know what, I'll take care of it, because this is, this is nothing,
Yeah.
So.
Bank on that survey. Put your faith.
Well, it changes a little bit, they're not every.
They're
single-
not that-
We just did that one with 4 different surveys,
Yeah.
it's like.
Depends if you go from maps or go out and actually, it's like it's.
The only thing that's
Well, it's all done
Solar
now
power.
with satellite stuff, and
GPS.
we got GPS,
Which can be
and
off.
it can be,
Yeah.
it can be off.
Yeah.
It's just not that,
Well, it's not military.
right, we don't get the good stuff.
The only thing I thought was a little strange on this is increased water consumption at the subject property.
I saw that.
That would be adding a bedroom. It wouldn't be adding a bathroom. It wouldn't be adding an outdoor shower. It'd be adding a bedroom. So maybe that should be said as such to define what increases water consumption,
Yes,
because the
yeah.
CAC is going to look at that
mean-
different than the health
Right.
department. That term just seems.
Well, that actually
vague.
might be something that you could address in the definitions. In other words, you could leave the text as it is, and then,
Definition of water consumption?
yeah, like things that,
Is there a definition of water consumption?
well, presumably,
Can there be irrigation, like the irrigation line is too long? Or
She's gonna check.
So, yeah, there's the. so
But, I think that would, I think,
Swimming pool, is that technically adding water consumption?
Yes, I would,
yeah.
I think it shouldn't be because everything should be pumped in, but no.
No one does that. Irrigation, I'm gonna add a permitted irrigation system because I'm not in the near shore peninsula overlay.
Mhm.
Is that gonna increase water consumption?
I think we should ask
So I
Stephen
think,
Kiley, because he's the one that drafted it, and I suspect that he's got some empirical experience that generated that. That strikes me as the kind of thing that, he would say, this is what happened, this is what's happened in the past.
Specifically to what you were talking about, Reed, about the, 6 inches or a foot, and this talks about diminishes is anything that does not increase an encroachment to the regulated area. So that seems like even an inch more in would be.
Well, I think that I believe that the concept of de minimis is that it's insignificant, it's not significant. It's
Right.
not that it doesn't exist.
But this is I'm talking about the actual definition.
Of-
Which is de minimis. De minimis, any proposed change to the approved survey site plan or construction that does not, one, increase in encroachment to regulated area. That to me says,
He defines it in the code though,
I
right?
believe,
Defines that as like the wetlands area, so it doesn't encroach into an already ruled wetlands.
You want us, Meg, do you want to sit at the desk over here?
You can sit next to here.
and it might be that there's.
But I know-
other stuff supporting this.
He
That'll
had,
probably all come out on Friday. I suspect.
he has a definition for,
I thought it meant of minimal, of minimal impact or minimal.
It's.
Yeah.
Well, I think he's defining it here, is it, or he's saying, de minimis, this is what I consider de minimis.
Yeah, that's what it's like.
But isn't it based on a
Well,
legal, on
technically-
a sort of fundamental legal concept?
Technically, it means minor to, too trivial or minor to merit consideration.
Yes,
in
right.
law.
That's how he uses it.
Yeah, okay.
But it talks about some specifics in his examples
Mhm.
that I think might be contrary, it says these are not de minimis, is what he's saying.
yeah, increase and encroachment into the regular area. And he-
'Cause it's a
Yeah, he's got
do
the
not-
seven
minimis.
things here. He's
Right,
got
those-
this thing, right? where he's
Yeah.
got
Do not
seven-
follow.
seven-
Exactly.
Yeah,
Same
yeah,
thing.
that's what I had. up.
And
You might want to put the word significant in there.
Well, it's-
what is it, any plans that do not increase, I mean,
They
this,
do not
this
significant,
seems the way it's worded
right,
to be very much like it could be de minimis in some other way, it's like a small change.
yeah.
But if in the regulated area, no, that's not allowed.
So perhaps he needs to change the definition to say significant, a significant
Yeah.
yeah.
but that, the significant is so
And that's,
interpretive.
you might have
Can't
to
use
be
that
more
word.
specific, so I,
Yeah, but that's it's, in other words, for example, in code enforcement,
Mhm.
there is a term that's used a lot where they say must, and they have a bunch of criteria, and then they say or approved by the inspector. And what that means is it's
yeah,
because you have to have some latitude.
I'm saying the way this is written, it sounds like it's removing the latitude specifically.
Right
The
on,
one that you were.
Yeah,
expressing.
yeah.
right under purpose.
Yeah, that one, I think he's talking about, like, let's say you have a wetlands permit, and you've been given a 100-foot exemption. You are not allowed to go and encroach further upon that 100-foot exemption, even if it's an inch. That wouldn't qualify as a de minimis change because you've already been given an exemption for that
Mhm.
100-foot intrusion. So if you take 2 more inches, that's too much. It
Right.
doesn't count.
You have to err on the
You've
side.
already,
of-
exactly, you've already received that. So I believe that's his take on it.
So under purposes states certain minor changes that have no impact on the environment nor the public health, safety and welfare and are otherwise code compliant need not to go through a full amendment process. But they do want to clarify it.
I mean, I think the idea is to get away from
I'm having to do a full permit review every time you.
and having the whole, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin conversation, at a certain point, you just have to use common sense and judgment.
Reed, you remember when we did that house out in Total Drive? Edie's,
Oh, Edie Landis.
and his house built in 1926.
Mhm.
And when you walk out the door, the first step is like straight down. And nowadays the code is you got to be, as wide as a door, 3 feet, right? Like level with the inside.
Yeah, it has to be 3 feet wide and 5 feet deep. It's actually an accessibility
So,
thing.
yeah, really. So,
Yeah.
but what if like in that case, I mean, she's.
Or as wide as the doorway and
She's
then,
right, as wide as the doorway now.
and 5 feet.
What are you talking about,
Five-
Stu?
Stu,
Landing.
right, this lane, but this house didn't have any landing, as soon as she stepped out of the house, she went straight down. But like, she was helping her husband with a wheelchair, and like, this is a safety issue. I mean, I think safety is more.
Well, health, safety.
Well, the code is
Mentions health, safety,
actually,
and welfare.
the code is actually very specific. if you change it, if you touch it substantially, you know, in other words, if you work on that area, then you do have to upgrade it. But if you don't, we have no right to make you change that to a,
Right, but putting in the stoop, you're increasing more impervious surface in the regular area.
right. Well, that would be something, it would depend a little bit on the situation. But the town,
Would you need a wetlands, permit?
For that additional
stupid.
15 square feet.
Yeah.
yes, you would. Sure, because it's as you could use your 100-foot exemption.
But that house
Yeah,
is
but what-
completely.
Yeah.
What if it isn't there, but I'm just thinking, like, I'm at safety.
That would be
The
something where
hierarchy of needs, safety is more important than,
you would, but they're not exclusive. You would have to address both issues in that case. We would have to send you for a wetlands permit.
Hmm.
And they would have to get the wetlands permit, but they would also have to meet the requirements of the building code.
Hmm.
You don't just get out of jail free.
to me, that seems still.
This really
That's
seems
de
like
minimis.
addressing minor.
Yeah. He's trying to.
So I think I'll email Stephen and see if we can get a definition, clarification on this increased water consumption. To me, just
I think that's a good one.
a little odd.
And this is on Friday, right? Friday. Did you want to, or you sound like you wanted to add something. You
I
were,
was just saying, this is, I think, mostly for like, let's say you have an approved wetlands permit, and then you make a change to the house that's outside of the entire wetlands designated area, outside the regulated area, the adjacent buffer, and then you're making a change somewhere outside of the wetlands, you don't have to go back to the wetlands because you've made a change to that permit, because it's not wetlands related, you know what I mean? Like-
because you did make a change in the for the wetlands permit.
Yeah.
If you have a 15-foot planting buffer and you're just changing it to be 20 feet here and 10 feet there, you're still having the same area. It's kind of.
You've already gone and gotten
You've already,
the blessing of, you've done what's required.
you're not touching any of the things that have been regulated, and you're doing something outside of that, and it doesn't impact any zoning or building code, or you're fully compliant with chapter 129, then it shouldn't be a significant thing.
Right.
Is kind of, I think, the point.
So if there is a definition section that would go with this, would that just be part of the whole code, or would it be under this little section?
It would go in the wetlands code. 'cause
It would be
this
in
is
there,
the
okay.
Part of the
Alright.
wetlands code. the amendment to it. So it would go in that chapter.
Let's see. Yeah, 129.8 is the definition section.
Mhm.
Right, the minutes.
Yeah.
That's the definition being.
Right. So it would go into the definitions in the wetland section,
Just
and then it would follow.
Yeah.
I see, so it's an increasing encroachment. So in other words, if you already have a 100-foot encroachment allowed, if you go another foot of your parking, it's only go past 100. Makes sense.
Yeah, you can.
I get it in context.
Does that mean? With that,
Outside of any of the wetlands.
so even in the adjacent regulated area, if I went 6 inches, a little bit more, that would
Yeah.
still have to go back to the town board? That's in the adjacent regulated.
No, I think
So this is really just the.
So we may need him to
The
clarify.
vegetated buffer.
We need him to clarify.
Yeah, we need him to clarify. Yeah, we don't, and you mean, you're talking about if it goes into the DEC regulated area?
Yeah, well,
We don't get, that's not our jurisdiction.
no. I was talking about the vegetate, the 0 to 75, where you
Right.
clearly says 75 feet only. And they sometimes have to go get a blessing. to-
Yeah, this doesn't say. So.
Is this for stuff that happens in the adjacent regulated area, that's 75 to 100, where, you may want to grab 6 more inches here?
I think what I'm understanding.
That's symmetry working
Yeah.
or something.
The 129 section is just wetlands. This only applies to wetlands parts. And then the 133 down below is the more broader zoning, which is where de minimis is defined differently,
Hmm.
specifically for that, which is the water consumption. That's for the.
Right. Right, so it'll go.
We should
into the
have, it'd be interesting to ask, let's query him about that and see what, because I have a feeling he's got some very specific reason for that.
There's gotta be some.
I'm missing then the question if I'm gonna send the email to him, then I know about clarifying that one definition and talking about whether this relates to the vegetated buffer or not.
Yeah,
What
no,
was the other part of the question?
increase in water consumption.
Yeah, I got
Right, you
that.
said that.
I think it's just those two.
Okay. So the next part of this, I put in discussion of application guidelines for wetlands permits and special permit applications, because there were a bunch of questions that came up after the last review. We can continue this discussion here. We can continue it. We can have one now. We can continue it in the future, but I also think it's going to be the easiest for you guys to understand when we actually go through one or two. So, so do you have any questions for wetlands right now, or was I able to answer them? Kind of,
No, the email background that you gave,
Yeah.
for me, was very helpful.
okay.
Right? So I think until we actually go through one, it's sort of like too much what ify, too what ify. It's like, it's
Right.
better to do it in practice,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Same with me,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so
But,
let's,
but you answered our questions.
yeah,
I felt
it was
comfortable.
as long as I answered them right.
We assume you answered them correctly.
Then bouncing around here, the White major subdivision. Do you guys want a little more background on that, or are you guys okay with just following what's going on?
I think
It's
following.
confusing as hell.
I think to me, it's like, it sounds like a bigger decision needs to be made, whether it's like a town decision, whether we're gonna, if somebody's pulling out and it's only gonna be a sub part of the parts getting split apart, that's a different.
So the way we've been looking this last round is it was a 10-lot subdivision.
Right.
They agreed to a certain list of conditions, all the family members, and it took them 30 years or so to get to that first plan because they're warring chapters. They're not all seeing eye to eye.
Yeah, yeah.
They got there finally. Basically, Bill Freivogel pushed it on them and got it through. And now they're coming back and they want, Bill and Carla want to sell 8 and 9.
Yep.
And George and his team wanted to sell 4, 5, and 6. But Bill didn't want to have to build the road. No one wants to build the road, but they had agreed to it. And this is all, there's a homeowner association, and they want us to release them from the homeowner association. So for day one, we said, you two have to combine your applications. We're not going to look at 2 independent applications. And you got to do this together. And everyone has to sign everything so that we're sure. that-
Can I ask why they don't want to build the road?
It's expensive, but they're due to get something
don't
like
need the road.
11 to 15
Well,
million dollars for selling these properties.
Well, I was
So,
just
I
gonna say, they're
well,
gonna
the
sell
one-
properties and can they
But
take a little bit
The
off
one,
the top?
the
to-
one thing I would say is that the road, it's complicated because you don't want to do a subdivision without very clear requirements as to what is going to need to be done.
Yeah.
However, what they're arguing is that until the actual trigger to build the road occurs, which is development of more than four
Any new development other than renovating the existing 4 structures.
right. Because it basically, fire apparatus access road is required if it's serving more than 4 structures.
Well, that would make sense because you have to go deep into it. I mean, how else are you gonna get it?
Right.
But they don't want to put in a big road. They want this little country development, you
But if they're
know,
gonna sell it, they're not even gonna be there using it.
Well,
they subdivided it
The reason
for
why-
family prop and to increase the value so they could then sell it for more money.
Of course.
And the argument is that some people are making the argument, Gordon Gooding in particular, that, well, a lot could happen. It may be that this property isn't, maybe 2 of the other properties could be purchased, for by some other entity and preserved. So then you don't need this road. And why would you have an asphalt road or some sort of, road that would satisfy the requirements of the fire apparatus access road, which are pretty serious.
Yeah.
If you don't need it because it spoils the intent of having this beautiful parkland.
Well, it doesn't, in theory, it depends totally on what they plan on developing the land for.
Right.
Right. So it's like, well, if I would think, great, you don't have to do the road if you basically put I'm not sure what the right legal term is, like, basically you cannot construct the building on that.
Yeah, I mean, that's, the trigger is,
Some kind of covenant
the-
on the deed about.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah,
But
yeah,
the-
it's,
It was
Yeah.
all set. It was all
Yeah.
set. And this was all done in 2014 to make the major road. But the last three lots,
so it's been bonded, the road's bonded. So one of the options that the applicant has, if they don't want to go develop, sell the lots or wait until they can sell the.
Who would do? who would
So
do
they
the
don't
bonds?
have to put it in, what they do is go with the bank, they bond it.
Yeah.
And the town accepts the bond, which the town did. But for many years, they would let the bond expire. We'd have to go chasing them to get it renewed. And they're supposed to keep on top of it, but they haven't. And now Bill and Carla want to sell those two lots and not have to do any of it because it's really the George White properties that require the road.
But it's all one.
and there's,
Yeah.
there's even another interesting potentiality, which is what happened with Ned's Road, you know,
Yeah.
Ned Smythe's property, where they got a subdivision and they did exactly this. They said, you don't have to put in the road until you construct a house, you know, a new building. And the requirements of the uniform code became a lot more draconian. And all of a sudden, the approved road was not wide enough. It did not have turnouts. It did not have all these attributes that made it much more expensive to do and required a much, bigger, a wider right of way.
Yep.
And so, because it went on for like 25 years, right? Didn't it sit sort of dormant?
It's
for-
sat dormant. This is the property
That I
behind,
remember that. part.
behind those tennis
Yeah.
courts.
And it was saved by the fact that it was bought.
He never sold one.
He never sold one. It was preserved. It was a 10.5 acre lot, subdivision, I think. And so what ended up happening is, thank goodness he didn't have to build the road, because the bond would no longer have been adequate to satisfy the requirements. of the road.
We were revisiting the bond.
Right.
And we try to revisit it every 2 years and
Because
have
of
them
changes.
increase,
Yeah.
well, prices.
Pricing, yeah, makes sense.
So we have to get Joe Lombardi to do another bond estimate, and then we have to have them agree to updating. It's a headache.
And so that's,
Can I ask a question about that? Is there like a working list that where you're keeping track of the ones that are about to expire and you could just go?
So
back
the
and
only
figure
one we
out-
have right now are white. is
Okay.
white.
but so, I mean, in other words, there are a lot of reasons why it's a lot easier for us to say, just build the road.
Yeah.
Because, it's herding cats. A lot can happen. And that's why it's the kind of thing that I think that first people tend to be much more indulgent about. And after you've been here a while, like Ian has, you're like, just build the road.
Well, it seems like there was an agreement. They want to change the agreement. Well, you want to change it, then we change it, start all over. Like, and that's,
So they already,
But they don't want to do it until it's triggered. And so in the
Yeah.
past, what has triggered it? Just the fact of having four
they have to
lots?
build. If they want to build or sell a lot or build a new, if someone wants to build something,
They got to put it in before.
and it's not just a road, it's 2 fire cisterns,
cisterns, yeah.
one on Monantic Road and one at the cul-de-sac that they're making. The one on Monantic Road is between the 8 and 9, lots 8 and 9. And I would think that if we are going to permit 8 and 9 to be sold, because George White clearly is backed out, the county is still interested in buying the 2 lots, then I'd like to figure out a way of insisting that one fire cistern goes in, because that
Well,
one
I-
fire cistern that serve those.
I asked that to Larry Wickmansky. He said, no way, you gotta do the whole thing.
Well,
What do you mean you
Larry,
have to
someone's
do the
got to
whole
talk to
thing?
Larry.
I mean, the whole, they can't get out of the whole road,
But,
That has to be
but if we're talking, if the
even though they're
road,
totally not connected.
if the road doesn't
Is
happen
that
in the
Larry's
future,
decision to make?
it's not his.
Well, I brought it up to him, that's what he said.
We have the ability, I believe, to override the fire commissioners.
Well, and you probably don't necessarily want to. The issue is just, what is the actual legal trigger? And what trigger do we want to put in? And who gets to make that decision?
So if the county backed out of buying 4, 5, 6, right?
Right. No, George White backed out of 4, 5, 6.
Yeah, but that deal is off.
We don't have that officially from anyone.
Well,
We
That's
just
what you
have
were
that
saying,
in
maybe we
writing
should
from
get it in
Carla.
writing,
It sounds like,
say
we-
that
yeah, I
That's
think,
what
I think until they come
happened.
back with reality, and this is all just people
But she
talking.
said that in that email, that's terminated.
That's what I had said, even though I don't have much background. in it,
That's
I
what
said,
Carla
maybe just
said.
Get it in writing.
Get it in writing, get it
So-
officially.
So if they don't buy it, what if somebody who wants to build a house and buys it? They want to go back to the old road, to the larger road.
I mean, the reality is that if
No, no.
push comes to shove, it's turned into a subdivision like it was going to begin with. And that's, and it doesn't become preserved.
They've already sold development, they've gotten money out of it already, selling development rights for lots 4, 5, and 6. There is already a conservation easement on those.
CDR.
Oh,
And-
really?
Yeah,
Okay, so they can't.
and then the other part, going to the Menantic Road fire cistern, their argument is gonna be, we're not building those 2 lots. There's not gonna be more houses there.
So then what do you need the system?
So what do you need the cistern for? And my argument was, well, you agreed to it. You gained value by the lots being subdivided. Now you've increased the value of those lots.
And the cisterns,
And the cisterns are to serve other houses on
Yeah,
Menantic Road too.
yeah, the cisterns are not only to serve that,
That specific area.
yeah,
They
the,
can't sell 7 and 8?
yeah.
They
It's
can't build
holding
on
water
7
for
and 8?
the broader.
Well, the
Yeah.
cistern would be on 7.
So-
The cistern, 7 also has some neighbor encroaches very closely and they have some agreement, I think personal agreement with 7.
And so they've had a financial gain from
Yeah.
having the cistern there.
By the subdivision being granted, they've gained financially.
So to me, if you gain, this is just my opinion, if you've gained financially from that, you have to follow through on what that gain was, right?
Because
And
presumably
they're
some
fighting it.
of these improvements are for the good of the greater good of the community. They're not just
Yeah,
for
yeah,
that,
yeah.
that.
And the numbers are being given, I mean, I'm not an assessor, but I know all these lots have a lot of wetlands issues and having run numerous wetlands applications, they're not easy. And so there's that added cost that someone would have to go through, so.
In other
they're
words,
getting some good numbers for those properties.
and the other thing is that from the good that the community would get after, of having these lots left pristine, it would be challenging, like you're saying, it would be very challenging to build on those. So it's not like, it's not as big
So it's
a,
better being preserved.
no, I'm saying if it's not preserved, it's not going to be ruined. It's not like they're going to build, there's not going to be a lot of development. So at this point, I'm not, by taking them off the tax rolls, I'm not sure how much benefit the town would actually get. There might be, the town's money might be spent better elsewhere. Who knows? I'm not in a position, I'm not
But
advocating that. I'm just saying, this is the reasoning.
So you can build on 4, 5, and 6, but you have to be back like 250 feet.
100 feet, it was a
No, it's like
minimal.
250.
But it's 100 feet from what? It's like, if you look at the wetlands there, the wetlands really are pervasive.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of, if you go 100 foot, it's also, when you go there, it's beautiful, but a lot of it is, where does the
Where's
wetlands
water
begin
stop?
here? It's not like there's
So
a
if they
high.
built a house there, it would be very far back from,
There's always things you can do. I don't know. I'd have to analyze that to answer it. But I just think the whole thing is hokey and this whole process, and I had many meetings butting heads with Bill Trivogel. Thankfully, Carla's got him to back away and now she's taking the lead. They were very contentious meetings, so, because he's just pushing for not having to do stuff and, just sign us, just release us. We don't have anything to do with that family, And I'm like, no, we're looking at it all together.
Yeah, it's like, there's an assigned agreement, right?
I think,
Yeah.
the
That's-
original, it was
Hmm.
Nelson, like the father had everything in his name, and then everything went to other names.
Well, and he was trying to do it in the
Name.
60s, right? Didn't he start in the mid to late 60s?
I'll tell you what I said.
It's been going on for a long time.
Al Kill told me that when I was a very young man, I joined the planning board. Didn't remember what year. And on my first day, Nelson White walked in with a map. So that was a long time ago. I don't know whether that was in the 70s or.
All right, more to come on that. So,
Did you ask them for anything in writing on? that?
yeah, I did.
Oh, yeah.
You want to see the map of Nelson White?
think.
Yeah, I've
Let's-
seen them, I saw that.
Oh,
Yeah,
So
You can take a photo of it.
we have one more thing to do, but what I'd like to do first is close this meeting. So Coco, we're done for the meeting. Please, let's end the recording. We're gonna do something